artist behind the brands Nymphai dolls and Adele. I'm making dolls since 2013 and specifically ball jointed dolls since 2016. Today I want to show you the process behind making porcelain ball jointed dolls. So without further ado, let's get on with the video. Here are some of my works. My own brand, Nymphai Dolls, is closely connected with nature, and each doll represents a certain plant. Every doll is like a protective goddess of the plant they represent. Now I'll walk you through this long and crazy process of making porcelain dolls. Once you sculpt a prototype of a doll, you can make plaster molds for porcelain casting. The porcelain is a liquid, so you need plaster to soak up the moisture. To make each part hollow, which you need for assembling, you just pour the excess porcelain out and wait a bit until you can open the mold. If you want to know how I've sculpted my prototype or made these molds, you can sign up for my online classes that I host on teachable.com. I'll leave the links in the description below. When you open the molds, the porcelain is still raw and very soft, so you need to be careful not to break the pieces. It still has the seams and all the imperfections from the molds that need to be cleaned up. For that, I use a soft brush, some water, and raw porcelain. It doesn't have to be perfect because I'll be sanding the pieces after the first firing in the kiln, which is called bisque firing. In the bisque firing, the porcelain is not fired to maturity yet, but it's needed for sanding and perfecting the pieces. At this stage, porcelain loses its moisture and hardens a lot. It still remains quite brittle, but you can sand, carve, and define the features of the doll more easily. After the bisque firing, you can start sanding the pieces. I prefer wet sanding to avoid the porcelain dust that can be harmful for your lungs. At this stage, the porcelain is not water soluble anymore, and wet sanding works perfectly. I prepare a tub of water and, using a sanding sponge, some carving tools, begin to perfect the pieces of the doll. This part can be quite annoying because my dolls have at least 21 different parts to sand. Also, it can take a long time, and usually I sand one doll in 3 full work days. When all the sanding is done, the porcelain is fired to full maturity in the kiln. It changes the color, becomes a lot more translucent, and shrinks quite a bit. After that, it's time for painting the doll. Most artists use china paints that need to be fired in the kiln as well. China paints come as a powder and has to be mixed with a medium of your choice. Usually it's a blend of oils or turpentine. Most of them can contain lead, but nowadays you can find lead-free china paints. So have that in mind before purchasing. When mixed with the medium, the paint becomes liquid and are very nice to work with. Each layer needs to be fired in the kiln, and in the firing process, the paint bonds with porcelain on a molecular level. So you can't remove the paint after. For me, it takes at least 6 or 8 layers to paint the doll's face, so 6 to 8 firings in the kiln as well. To assemble the doll, I use steel springs and metal hooks. I have a full tutorial on my Patreon if you're interested. Because of the tension that springs provide, the doll can hold different poses. Here's how she looks assembled. It's weeks of work, but very fulfilling to me. But the doll is still not done. I start making the wigs and costumes to complete the story for each doll. I guess that's the most fun part, when you can clearly see the result already. I hope this was interesting. Thank you so much for watching. I'm happy to answer your questions in the comments. Check the links in the description for more information about doll making. See you in the next video!